Welcome to the My Careers podcast. We're recording today in the Enterprise M3 Careers Hub in Basingstoke, and I'm joined by Guy Lloyd and Lucy Sharp. Welcome to the podcast, Guy.
Thank you, Jo.
So can we start maybe, Guy, by talking about your career and experience of being a sales professional?
Delighted to. I started my sales career actually in pre-sales, in technical support for a company, a sales guy who was selling a product to the government, and I was doing the customer support side. And I found it very interesting talking to and meeting the customer. So I moved over time into a sales role. I took on the responsibility for selling. And that's how I started. And then through various moves, through companies, I was in IBM for quite a while. And IBM was fantastic for me. We lived in Switzerland for 2 years, lived in America for 3 years, all thanks to IBM. I've travelled over most of Europe. I've been to Asia many times, been to big sales conferences in Las Vegas and Dubai. I've worked for Microsoft. I've worked for and travelled in Eastern Europe, most of Eastern Europe. Had a lot of experience, and also worked for small companies. So, It's been fantastic. I mean, it's a tremendous career, and I recommend it to anybody.
So it's pretty global then. And maybe sometimes we wouldn't necessarily think of a career in sales as something that will allow us to travel the world. But to bring it back down to basics a little bit, like, what is sales?
What is sales? Well, I think we're all in sales to some degree. And Dan Pink wrote a very nice book called To Sell Is Human. And reality is selling is convincing somebody that to do something, really. Obviously, when you get into commercial sales, which is what you're talking about, it's about convincing somebody to spend some money on something.
Yeah.
And then there are two types of sales, really. There's business to consumer, so where you're selling to an individual, a person in the street, and then business to business, where you're selling to another business.
Okay.
And they are very different.
So can you give me an example of business to consumer?
Business to consumer, working typically in a shop, in maybe a department store, possibly in a car dealership.
Okay.
Could be in a estate agent selling houses,
Yeah.
that type of thing, where it's quite transactional, i.e.
Yeah.
there's not a lot of extended discussion. You're probably talking to one or two people as a salesperson. The values are relatively small. Obviously, housing is pretty big, but most of the transactions are relatively modest.
Yeah.
It's not a significant or a very another transaction that the buyer has to be worried too much about. They're probably quite familiar with the type of things they're buying.
Okay. And then how does that compare if we talk about business to business sales? What does that mean?
Well, let's say business selling to another business, and typically the duration of the discussions to get to the sale are much longer. Can be years. Could be that there are dozens or even hundreds of people involved in those discussions. The amount of money or value involved could be billions of pounds, literally. So it's much more significant. There's much more activity. It's much more complex. So orders of magnitude typically more challenging, shall we say, than the business to consumer.
Okay, so but selling as kind of like when we look at the skills required for selling, if I was a young person sitting in a classroom at school, I don't know, I'm in year 10, year 11, how would I know if I had the skills that might make me a good salesperson? What do they start with? What do they look like to a young person?
Well, there's no stereotypical salesperson, that's for sure. And the image of somebody in a flash suit with a red tie is really gone, particularly in business to business sales.
Okay.
I look for curiosity. I look for interest. If you can't sell to somebody if you're not interested in their situation, whether it's another company or an individual. If you don't know what they're about and what they want and what they need, how can you sell to them?
Okay.
So
yeah.
the curiosity, the interest. Do you like solving problems? Because selling is actually solving problems, because you're solving the customer's problem that they're facing.
Okay.
Tenacity, because resilience.
Yeah.
Working well with people, because it really is about people at the end of the day.
Yes.
Those are the sort of fundamental type skills which everybody has to some degree.
Okay.
You don't need to be pushy. In fact, pushy is not good in business to business sales.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's often what we see in business to consumer, because again, the nature of that sale is quite short term. It's transactional. So the seller knows that if they don't do the deal, then the person is not going to come back.
Yeah.
It's not the case in business to business. In fact, if you were pushy, you would never make a sale.
So it's quite important that you are, you know, a good like people person. You're able to like understand people. Maybe you have like empathy, so you can understand what it is that kind of like what they need and how to meet that need. Is that kind of what we say about sales?
Absolutely, yeah. Good emotional intelligence, as they say, is important.
Yeah.
You need to understand people. There are lots of skills that you need. You know, the understanding people, and what makes them tick,
Yeah.
what's important to them.
Mm.
Being able to actually ask good questions to actually uncover the needs they've got, help convince them that what you're doing is actually in their benefits, and the risk of investing in that thing is minimal, because that's what puts off most businesses actually is the risk of change. And in fact, an individual,
Yeah.
if you think that purchase is not a very sensible one, you're not going to do it, are you?
No, I guess so. And also like the we talk about like sort of skills and thinking about young people in the classroom, and sometimes it will be like, you know, there are certain students who are quite chatty, and have quite a lot to say, and we might make that assumption that they would be quite good in sales because they're good at talking. But part of sales, that's something that's really important as well, is actually being able to listen, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Be careful with the really chatty ones, because the most important skill actually in some ways is listening.
Okay.
Asking good questions and listening to answers.
Yeah.
The more the customer speaks, the better. The less you speak, the better.
Okay.
It's not about browbeating somebody into your point of view. It's about helping them discover and make their own path to that conclusion. Yeah.
Right.
So careful questions, good thinking, good listening is really important. And so it's not about being an extrovert.
No. Okay.
You know, that is helpful, because you're putting it into uncomfortable situations, maybe where you're meeting people you haven't met before. But it's not a requirement. You know, the best salespeople are not the most extrovert. That's for sure. You know, they're
Okay.
balanced. They're balanced people.
Right, okay. And what about things like presentation skills? Because often in a school or a college environment, when young people are asked to maybe like work on a piece of work as a team, and then they're asked to present it to their peers. I've worked in education, and I've seen how that can like instill fear into young people. Is it good to develop those skills when we're at school and at college, and when we have opportunities like that? Are they going to help them in the future, in their future careers, and particularly in sales, do you think?
Well, certainly, I think, you know, being able to present is an important part of selling.
Yeah.
But it's not the only thing. It's not what, you know. It's not what it's all about. But absolutely, the more practice you get on these things, the more comfortable you become, the easier it is. But you know, it's still, you know, if you're going into the boardroom of a big enterprise company,
Yeah.
that's still nerve-wracking for anybody. You know, don't kid me.
Yeah.
But you say the more you do it, the more comfortable you can become, and the more polished you are. And it's all about being confident. If you're confident in your message, your audience will be comfortable and confident in what you say.
Yes. Yeah.
So practice makes perfect, as they say.
Yeah. And you need to know your stuff, don't you? You need to know what you're selling so that you're able to sell it with authority, to ensure that person then feels confident that they're buying the right service or the right product.
Yes, it's actually it's being confident in what the customer's need is.
Yeah. Okay.
Because what it's all about is explaining how the customer's situation is going to be improved by the investment in what you offer. If you don't understand their situation, if you're not curious about their situation,
Yeah.
all you're doing is talking about speeds and feeds and of what you've got to offer.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
you're showing no empathy and understanding about what their situation is.
Okay. So if we were thinking about where a career in sales might start, what would you see as like a real, like the entry point into sales for a young person, maybe in year 11? They've just finished their GCSEs. They're thinking, yeah, I'm gonna get a job in the summer. So is that a good way to kind of like dip your toe and start thinking, do I like dealing with customers? Am I good at, like, you know, upselling? Maybe someone comes in for one product and they end up walking out with more. Is that what we would call like an entry level into sales?
I think anything where you're dealing with sort of customer service type jobs, so on a sort of sales floor is great. I mean, I started in For those who remember MFI, flat pack furniture,
Okay,
I worked
yeah.
on the sales floor
Yeah.
there, and that was great fun. A lot of money. I paid tax when I was still a 16, 17-year-old. That's how much, it was great.
Yeah.
But really enjoy the discussion, helping people fit out their kitchens, fit out their living rooms. And that discussion, I think, really helped me to decide, yes, I enjoy this. I enjoy helping people. And it is about helping people. Fundamentally, you're helping an individual or a company to get to a better position.
Yeah.
Think of sales a bit like a doctor's job is to make the patient better.
Yeah.
A professional salesperson makes their customer's business better.
Okay.
Yeah, we're making things better. We're a service industry. So anything in customer service is a
Yeah.
great foundation for this job.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, customers are the lifeblood of a business, aren't they? So a business has to look after their customers, has to attract more customers in order for that business to kind of continue and be successful and grow. So, every business has sales.
Every single company, every single organization has sales, whether even the charities, they're selling the concept of donating to the charity. But, businesses, absolutely, without a sale, there's no business.
No.
And so they are really the forefront of commerce. Without successful sales functions, no business can survive.
No. So the sales profession rather, is really important, isn't it?
It's vital, I think, and
Yeah.
we don't have enough salespeople. We
Yeah.
have something like 90,000 vacancies at the moment for salespeople in the UK. This is for business to business sales. We have about 30,000 people entering the profession each year.
Okay.
Of that, a minimal number have qualifications.
Yeah.
So if you enter the workforce with some qualifications, you will be in high demand.
Gosh, well, that's good to know. And so we're thinking about sort of like the entry paths into sales and the qualifications. It's great now that there are apprenticeships available, and we're going to talk to a couple of young people who have followed like the apprenticeship, but also been to university and gone into sales that way. And it will be great to hear their stories. So these young people and these individuals, so they've entered into the sort of the profession of sales. Young people are very curious, I guess, about like the earning potential of the careers that they're going to head into. So can you give us an idea of like, if I'm 23, 24 years old and I'm in my first kind of like main sales role, what would they expect to earn? And then like, how does it work? How does commission work? What's commission all about?
Okay, well, the ranges of earnings for a starting salesperson is quite broad, I think. I would have thought that sort of person could earn 25, 30, 35,000.
Yeah.
If you're in the right business with the right type of need, they will pay well for a good salesperson. And you can prove yourself very quickly and progress very quickly as well. So
Okay.
in 5 years' time, you could be earning double that quite easily.
Okay.
The best salespeople who are working for larger enterprises are probably earning well into six figures. And in fact, it's not uncommon for the best salespeople to be earning more than a chief executive. That is not uncommon.
And they do that by hitting their sales targets?
Yes, they do. Most salespeople are measured on a revenue, the amount of sales they make, and they get paid a percentage of that value as a commission.
Yeah.
So you have a base salary, which is usually quite nice, and then you have almost the same again, typically in commission.
Yeah.
And then when you earn more than your target, so you're asked to sell £1 million worth of something,
Yeah.
and you sell £2 million worth of something, you're going to get twice as much commission or even more than that. Because
Okay.
when you make your target, often you get accelerators, which means you actually get a higher percentage of the sales value than before you make your target.
Okay. So, as an individual going into sales then, what are those kind of personality traits maybe that like make someone think, "Ooh, I want to get into sales"? Is it that they can just see the pound signs, that that's their motivation? What are they like, people who thrive in those environments? Because it's quite stressful, isn't it?
It can be. A lot of the environment will depend on the company you work for,
Yeah.
and just how they approach sales. But if you're only motivated by the commissions, you probably will not be quite as successful as if you are motivated by doing the right thing for the customer. Because
Okay.
if you understand the customer and you want to support them, they're going to buy from you. If you don't really, you're not really interested in the customer and you just want to get your commission check, they'll know that, they'll sense that, and they won't be so keen to buy from you.
Okay.
So commission is a fantastic reward for doing a great job, but you need to do the great job first. Yeah.
Okay, that's a really good way of putting it, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah, because it's like you're not going to get something for nothing, are you?
No.
Really.
And if you're not, if you're not sincerely, if you don't come across as being sincerely interested in improving their situation,
Yeah.
they will sense that, and they will be
Okay.
cautious about buying what they have to offer, which means that selling is going to be a lot harder, which means you're not going to get as much commission.
Okay.
But if you generally want to help the customer or the company you're talking to, they'll see that that's your motivation, and they'll be much more ready to invest in what you have to offer, which means the sale will happen quicker, which means you get more commission.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Excellent. And so, future prospects. So we spoke about the fact that there were these roles that aren't filled at the moment. So if I was a young person and I said to my parents, I think I'm going to go into sales, what would I say to my parent if they said, oh no, you don't do that? Like, where's the job security in that? Where's the future sort of prospects in a career in sales?
Well, I mean, I think anybody who does well in sales has a fantastic prospect. They make lots of money.
Yeah.
They have a great lifestyle, lots of independence. They can travel a lot.
Yeah.
I think the problem is perception. People, and I hate to use this analogy, second-hand car salesperson type thing. That's what selling is. That's a very small part of or element of selling. Most selling is a lot more professional.
Yeah.
It's a lot more organised, and it is a really good career. And it's a great way to lead into senior positions, maybe chief exec. A lot of chief execs now are coming through the sales route because businesses are about sales ultimately.
Yes.
And as a salesperson, you have to actually understand a lot about business. As a
Yeah.
professional salesperson, you have to understand about accounts, about supply chains, about finance, all these things, because you're actually selling to a business and saying how it impacts their business. If you don't understand the business, you can't make that proposition. So you learn a lot about business, which means you've got your skills are very transferable. So one of the great things about sales is if you're working in one industry that's going through hard times,
Yes.
you can easily move to another industry.
Yeah. Because you've got those skills that you know how to sell. So as long as you can learn the knowledge of that new industry, you can just move those skills
Absolutely.
across. And it's interesting you talk about understanding a business. So again, if we're taking it back into the classroom and progression routes, studying subjects like business and economics, they're going to really help give young people an overview of like how finance and the business world works, the impact of it.
Absolutely.
So those could be quite good subjects to study
Absolutely.
at GCSE, at A level, and then maybe on like vocational courses like BTECs or T levels, which they've brought a T level out, a business T level, which is great. So if we can get employers to sort of embrace that vocational learning, then that's going to stand those young people in with good sort of opportunities going forward, isn't it?
No, absolutely. I think get some foundational skills about what selling is about, what business is about.
Yeah.
Puts you in a great position. It makes you very employable because, but certainly the small and medium enterprises, the small companies are desperate for salespeople who know what they're doing. They can't afford to pay the high ticket price that qualified, experienced salespeople get, who tend to work in the big companies. So they need to look at people entering the workforce. So if you're
Yes.
entering the workforce with some foundational skills in selling, you're going to be very attractive. You're going to stand out, and you're going to be very employable. And then
That's good.
potentially you can move on to a big enterprise, potentially, or you can stay
Yeah.
in the smaller one. Maybe you help the smaller one become a bigger one. You know?
Absolutely. Or even set up your own business, because those skills that you learn as a salesperson, often those people are quite entrepreneurial. So opportunities then to like take that learning and that knowledge and think, well, okay, set my own successful
Absolutely.
business up as well.
And I'd
So it
actually
really can lead into so many opportunities, can't it?
lots and lots. And I think actually, as if you are an entrepreneur, then actually understanding sales is so important. There's so many fantastic ideas and companies that fail to achieve their potential because they don't know how to sell. They have a great
Okay.
idea, but they think
Yes.
it sells itself, and nothing sells itself. You
No.
have to explain to the customer how it helps them be better.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that translation, that's sort of, okay, all these wonderful bits and pieces in this thing, this product, this is how it impacts you, this is how it makes you better, how it makes
Yeah.
your life better, how it makes your business better. If you can't do that, people aren't going to invest because they don't have the understanding to do that themselves. That's selling.
Yeah.
So a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of thinking that a great product sells itself. It does not.
No, they need good salespeople to do it.
Absolutely.
Basically, that's the backbone of the business world, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's why salespeople are in high demand, and also they get well paid.
I'm now joined by Lucy, and Lucy, you are a client manager at Virgin Media O2 Business. Is that correct?
Yes. Hello.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. I wonder, Lucy, could you share with us your sort of career pathway into the sales profession from when you were studying your A-levels to how you ended up as a client manager at Virgin Media O2 Business?
Yeah, perfect. So kind of finishing my GCSEs, I decided to focus on kind of where I was achieving good grades, but also kind of subjects that I was enjoying. So I picked history, English and religious studies at the time.
Okay.
And obviously wanted to make sure that coming out of that, I had the best results possible, which would open the door into whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I wasn't someone that had a vocation or
Yeah.
a career path in mind. I just wanted to ensure that I got the grades that I needed.
Yeah. Okay.
So kind of coming through A-level, did pretty well, kind of everything went to plan and got the grades that I needed to start to apply to university. So originally
Yeah.
looking at kind of going into university, what do I want to do? Again, don't really know what I want to do longer term. So I took the advice of do something that you think that you're good at, you think that you enjoy. So
Yeah.
at that point, I chose to apply for a philosophy degree
Okay.
and was successful getting into King's College to study philosophy.
Yeah.
And I think going into that, I soon realised that actually I was slightly different from the people in the room.
Okay.
They were really engaging with the content. They were really
Yeah.
enjoying the man hours that were going into it. And something, it didn't quite feel right.
And what stage was that? How far into the course were you?
Pretty quick. So I was about 3 months in.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I was getting, probably the best way to describe it, you're in a relationship and you get that ick.
Yeah.
And you can't shift the ick.
Yeah.
And it started to fester, and I was kind of in two minds of, I've got in, I'm actually doing all right.
Yeah.
Am I actually going to leave?
Right.
Am I actually going to make that
Yeah.
decision? Because it's a big one.
It's a brave decision.
Yeah. And obviously people have their own opinions around what you should be doing, so you've got to
Yeah.
navigate that.
Yeah.
So pretty quickly knew that it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And probably made the brave,
Yeah.
we won't go with reckless, a decision
No, yeah.
to pull myself out of university
Yeah.
at that point in time and realise
Yeah.
actually I need to do something that I'm passionate about. I need to do something that I'm willing to put the work in for and can come out, doing well. And if
Yeah.
it's not quite right, I'm never going to achieve that.
Well, it's good that you knew that though. So I'd say that was brave.
We'll go with brave.
Yeah. I'll go with brave.
So obviously you then have to make the fearful phone call home to
Yeah.
say, I think I'm going to make this decision.
Yeah.
Hindsight is obviously a wonderful thing. Everyone now says I made exactly the right decision.
Yeah.
But it's quite difficult coming home. All your
Yeah.
friends are at university, they're all studying.
Yeah.
And I was back living at home.
Yeah.
Decided I need to take some time to think about what I want to do, but this isn't sit at home,
Yeah.
relax.
No.
I need to go out and get a job.
Yeah.
So started working in retail,
Yeah.
working in pubs,
Yeah.
and kind of being on that scene, and actually realised I like talking to people.
Yeah.
I need to be with people. And actually I didn't know in what capacity
No.
I wanted to be with people, but I knew whatever job I needed, it needed to be customer facing to some extent.
Yeah.
And that kind of spurred me to look at different degrees, look at what was going on.
Yeah.
And what I realised, to be customer facing, I probably needed to be in a big corporate.
Yeah.
And what better way to understand a big corporate from outside looking in than to go to study something that would give me kind of a foundation level of
Yeah.
learning.
Okay.
So I made the decision that business studies would be my kind of chosen route, and that would be a course that I wanted to entertain. And I'd pick modules that were, finance, law, marketing, PR, give me a good holistic view.
Yeah.
So kind of a year out of uni, went back into Birmingham Uni for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and came out pretty well. Came out with my first class degree, so it
Wow.
worked out well.
That's amazing. So, I think it's really good to be really honest about the fact that like sometimes we make these decisions and we know in our gut that it's not the right decision, and but by making that step to withdraw yourself from that, by working in retail and working in the pubs, you've kind of like light bulb moment that you thought, actually I like being around people, so that's great. So it's not like a real negative. Actually, that whole year taught you like a bit more about like your self-awareness and your skills and what makes you tick, really, didn't it?
Yeah. And I think what you don't realise is almost you're doing these jobs, but actually you are selling. You are engaging, you are finding opportunity in it. And it's pretty tough. I mean, I was working from 10 a.m. till 2 in the morning sometimes.
Wow.
And kind of realised I probably prefer to do something different.
Yeah.
But actually the skills that I'm learning
Yeah.
and the things that I can take from this into a career are going to be invaluable.
Yeah, brilliant. So that's what we call kind of like transferable skills, isn't it? So you got your degree. You had a little setback in the middle of your degree as well, which I think is worth touching on because it's another demonstration of kind of like your resilience, I guess, in the process of getting where you are today. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, so I'd gone back to university, obviously, done a year, had a year out, gone back, and I was on the trajectory of let's get this done this time and let's do it well. And unfortunately, just before my final exams, I was the passenger in quite a severe car crash. So both my partner and I, we ended up with pretty horrific injuries. So he was bleeds on his brain in hospital, fractured skull. I was broken spine, broken neck, pretty severe. And obviously focus shifts in that moment. Once my surgery, which was fortunately, touch wood, successful, I had to learn how to walk, how to kind of rebuild the person that I was. And I think it's weird because you can become so fixated on where you want to go actually when you get a knockback like that and you have to just reset and try and be the person you were. It's quite interesting. But the focus was obviously rehabilitation, getting back on my feet. But I knew I wanted to go back. I was 2 modules away from finishing my degree. So as soon as I could, and my university was super accommodating, I went back and finished those couple of modules so I could close down my degree.
Yeah, and you got a first class honours.
Yes,
so you
which was a nice prize at the end of it all.
Yeah, I mean, considering what you went through, that's like amazing. Yeah, so, and it's a really good demonstration to just show that you just like don't give up, really, isn't it? Yeah.
It's interesting because in sales, 101 School of Sales, they always say you've got to be resilient.
Yeah.
And you know the only consistent is change, and actually what you realise. Life can change like that, but actually it's the perseverance, the rebuilding and the resilience that is key.
Yeah, so that's led to you having a very successful career. So you applied for graduate schemes and were successful in securing a role. So maybe you could explain like where you ended up and what your graduate scheme like involved with regards to sort of like the sales process and introducing you to that within a corporate environment.
Yeah. So I kind of started looking, just Googling, really, graduate schemes. I wasn't super up to speed with what was available, so kind of had to look around, and I knew kind of from the initial research that sales and a sales graduate programme would be the right fit for me, albeit there's obviously lots of different companies that are offering sales schemes, so you're trying to almost work out from a cultural perspective, where do you think you're going to fit? And for me, I applied for the Virgin Graduate Scheme, and they're quite intense processes. So I think you go through applications, interviews, assessment centres, more interviews, you name it.
Yeah.
But I think in that process, you almost realise not only do I think I'd be a good fit for your organisation, but I think you'd be a good fit for me as well. And you find that kind of mutual like. And I think going kind of through the process, you start to realise, I feel like I'm going to fit in here. I feel like this is where I want to be. And actually, you know, when they bring up people that have grown, developed and gone through the process and you're seeing what they're achieving, it's very interesting. So managed to get my place, which was awesome. Went in, and I think then you start to realise what sales actually is, because you think you know what it is until you actually start doing it. And it's different, a little bit different. So the way the scheme is structured is it's, let's get you over the fear of being on the phone, first of all. So into a contact centre, onto a retentions line, which effectively means when you push the button saying I want to leave, you come through to maybe someone like me that tries to convince you want to stay and re-secure your business. And I think you're taking 20 to 40 calls a day.
Right.
And that is a very intense way of actually working out, do I enjoy this?
Yeah.
Can I do it? And am I being successful in it?
So it's really like Virgin Media putting you right at kind of like, you know, like the starting point to see. It's a bit sink or swim really, isn't it? You know, really kind of like the basics of selling is where, even though you've got a degree, you have to go in at the bottom and just see whether that is you can hack it really.
Yeah, you've got to earn your stripes effectively,
Right.
but also you've got to make sure that you're it's the right time, shall we say? And actually, what you couldn't do is come straight into a business and go and do the job that I'm doing now.
Right.
It's just not feasible. You've
Right.
got to grow and develop, and actually, even just the basics of the fear of the phone, it's a real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, young
But-
people don't speak on the phone,
Yeah.
do they?
But doing it for 3 months, it becomes
Yeah.
I can do that. So you kind of move through that.
Yeah.
Then you go into more of a desk-based account management role, which is selling a small set of products to a larger customer base, maybe 80 different customers that you're managing.
Okay.
So you're starting to get that more strategic selling
Yeah.
rather than kind of your broadbands or your phones that I was selling in the contact centre, but still with the comfort of a big team, office environment, and a lot of
Yeah.
mentoring and coaching.
Okay.
And moving on from that, kind of typically the third and final rotation is around putting you with some of our field-based account managers. So effectively you can see what they're doing, work with some bigger, more strategic accounts, but also with the comfort blanket of if you fall, someone's going to catch you.
Okay. Which is nice when you're still training.
Yeah. So I'm going to manage all the business as usual day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
But actually I can get exposure to some of the more glamorous strategic opportunities and how they're being managed through the business and with
Yeah.
the customer.
Yeah.
So it's a very intense, quick program that gives you a lot of foundation skills.
Yeah.
In probably 18 to 24 months, you are feeling pretty ready, albeit never completely ready,
Yeah.
to move into kind of the world,
Yeah.
the real world off the grad scheme.
Yeah, okay. And so then you were given an opportunity to sort of like take on more responsibility and use that sort of skills and training that you'd established on the grad programme, and that's taken you to where you are today. So what does your role involve now then? So, and how old are you now, Lucy?
So I'm 30.
So you're 30
Yeah.
years old and you are a client manager.
Yeah, so coming off the grad scheme, I was really, really fortunate in terms of timing. I think you build a reputation, you build credibility, you build an internal network because
Yeah.
you're going to rely very heavily on them.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate that I was moved off the grad scheme early to work with one of our most successful client directors, this lady called Angela Wood. And we were just in sync. We
Right.
just got it.
Yeah.
And we managed a client base together. And as she got promoted, I took that client base
Yeah.
kind of by myself. But actually, working with someone that's been doing this for 10 years, that is doing it very well, and what you start to realise is kind of the skills, the way they're saying things, how they're saying it, how they're being successful,
Yeah.
but putting your own flair on it. I think she's always said to me, you know, sales is about your integrity, it's about being genuine. It's not about you copying someone else's style. There can be many
Okay.
different styles and
Yeah.
people are still achieving the same results.
Okay.
So I kind of had this opportunity to hone this skill, but thrown into the deep end pretty quickly. You're working on some of our largest accounts straight off the grad scheme, but with the comfort blanket of a mentor like that, it
Yeah.
was very, very, very fortunate.
Yeah.
And effectively we went through a joint venture a couple of years ago, so Virgin Media joined with O2.
Okay.
And when that happened, it obviously opened up a whole host of additional opportunities. So we had clients that maybe just were customers of Virgin, clients that were just customers of O2's, and the opportunity transpired to move over to our strategic account space and take one of our top tier strategic clients. So I've been doing that for just over the last 12 months now.
Okay. And are you enjoying it?
I absolutely love it. I do.
you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess you're always going to be learning. You're always going to be developing those skills. But do you think that if you cast your mind back to like when you're in school, say in different situations when you're like, I don't know, in year 10 or year 11 or when you're doing your A levels, Do you think there were, looking back, any skills that you had then that you recognise as being helpful now?
So I think I've always liked to talk, and actually my mum would say I could make or break a room in a sentence if I wanted to.
Okay.
And what I realised is I needed to be around people, I needed to engage with people.
Yeah.
But I was also naturally interested in why people made the decisions that they did, why people
Okay.
thought the way they thought.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, being intrigued and interested is something that's fundamental to sales.
Absolutely.
You know, I need to understand why you're doing what you're doing, why you're thinking the way you're thinking, what's making you tick.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not here to force a sale down your throat. I'm here to understand and
Yeah.
translate what I can offer into your language. So I think that was something, just being inquisitive, wanting
Yeah.
to understand.
Yeah.
But also, you know, I've always been a chatterbox. I've had to learn it's not what you say, it's how you say it sometimes.
Yeah,
And sometimes
fair enough.
passion has to come off in the right way.
Yes.
But I think they're probably kind of the two things that I'd say led me almost into
Yeah.
sales. If you're looking at kind of that young age, I'd
Yeah.
probably say there are a couple of things.
But sometimes it can be a little bit unfortunate if you're a chatty person, like in the classroom or like within a sixth form class, for example, because you know it can be viewed as like disruptive or not that helpful, and so it's a shame really sometimes, isn't it, that like young people might have these skills but actually it's not seen as an asset, it's actually seen as something quite negative. So there's probably quite a sort of a strong message to send out to like young people who might be listening to this, you know, like what advice would you give to them if they were listening to you thinking, oh, okay, yeah, you know, I kind of imagine myself doing something like that. Is there any particular advice you would give?
I think it depends on the environment and you've got to pick your moments.
Yeah.
So sometimes you're just not going to say anything. And you've got to,
Okay.
you know, you've got to sit there, you know, for the sake of the wider group. You know, you're in a classroom. It's the same as when you work in a team and work.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to take in the context of your environment. So actually sometimes those moments to listen,
Yeah.
sometimes those moments to question,
Yeah.
and actually picking those moments and making people aware that you're not doing it to be disruptive. You're actually just genuinely interested or you want to understand more.
Yeah.
And if it isn't the right moment to have that conversation, if you genuinely are interested,
Yeah.
ask for a different moment.
Yeah. Okay.
Find opportunity outside
Yeah.
of that moment, because actually sometimes for the benefit of the group, stuff's got to get done. But
Yeah.
it is difficult.
Yeah. And you like to say it's like there's such a pressure, isn't there, like within the classroom environment to get through the lesson and
Yeah.
like and it just sometimes just feels like a shame. But I think that's really good advice to sort of like learn, and we could all do with that advice, isn't
Yeah.
it? Learn when to listen and to listen properly, and learn when it's the right time to like give your opinion or give your thoughts or like you say question. And when we were speaking to Guy, he felt that like a lot of sales skills were related to like problem solving, because you are trying to solve a problem for your client. And how do you think that kind of like does that relate to you? Like do you see, were you a good problem solver when you like even with your friends like in social circumstances and that?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, it's looking at things holistically, not jumping to conclusions
Okay.
either. So actually, you're never going to have complete clarity of information, but you need to gather as much information as you can quickly to make an informed decision.
Yeah.
And I think I used to be, and I probably don't know how to say this almost, you know, friends are having arguments, friends are having moments. I probably inserted myself in it, tried to navigate it, be the puppet master, be the mouthpiece, and also try and help people articulate what they're trying to say. Because a lot of the times people hear what they want to hear rather than actually what's happening.
Yeah.
So I think in that setting, yeah, and actually if you get engaged in, you know, sports teams, etc., drama, whatever it might be, you know, not everything's going to always go to plan, and actually being able to deal with unforeseen circumstances, not panic, take
Yeah.
a moment to breathe,
Yeah.
and then work through the problem. but also it's not in sales, the onus on the salesperson by themselves. It's a team sport.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
actually we might have problems that touch many different areas.
Yeah.
Or actually the solution might be a technical one, a commercial one. Sales is an overarching message for a lot of people that work together to make stuff happen.
Okay. It's a really good description. And so, if there was one piece of advice that you would give to someone who is in year 12 or year 13, what would it be about sales?
About sales.
Yeah, about just getting into sales. What's the real benefit, do you think? Is it the car you drive now and the holidays you go on?
So I actually think it's the opportunity. I think
Yeah.
what's amazing about sales is there is no finish line.
Okay.
You create your own finish line.
Yeah.
So actually, you can be motivated by the money, the title, whatever.
Yeah.
Those things are nice. We all like those. But actually, there is no end point.
Okay.
Once you're in sales, you could be selling broadband in a contact centre, or you could be selling, whatever to the biggest clients in the world.
Okay.
It's a door opener to anything. So actually, I don't see an end. I just see lots of opportunity to develop, and I'm not entirely sure where I'm going to end, where I'm going to finish. But I almost don't ever want to say I'm finished, because a finish means I'm done, and I'm not done.
No.
And I think sales is one career where you can do whatever you want and you can achieve whatever you want to achieve. And I think that's what makes it so exciting. There is so many opportunities, and you're the heartbeat of a business.
Absolutely. I think you summed that up perfectly. And it's been lovely to hear your story today, Lucy, and to hear how you've navigated those setbacks which you've had, but how you've kind of come through them, made great progress, and you're really excited about the future. And I wish you lots of success. I don't think you need luck or anything like that. I think you've obviously you've got that special
I'll do
gift.
a bit of luck.
Yeah. But I think it just seems like you're really heading in the right direction, and it's just been lovely to hear your story today. And I'm sure that it will inspire the young people who might be listening to this, and maybe sow a little seed about the benefits of getting into the sales profession. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.